So what's up guys, I'm Dmitry, and today I transitioned my system from a mid-tower into a super tower as I want to get into the mindset of what it feels like owning something that has so much potential for custom builds. This is the Phanteks Elite, the most expensive case we've ever worked with at $899. Now to be honest, I'm actually quite surprised Phanteks decided to take this pricing route because it's a massive leap from their previous most premium case, the Enthoo Primo at $299. So in this video, let's talk about the Elite, its price and its place on the market, its feature set and its ease of use right after this sponsor spot. Creativity is fueled by the best instruments. It doesn't always come easy, and in the process you often realize how important quality is. The RD400 by OCZ gives you quality and speed with M.2 interface, Toshiba NAND flash and a PCI bracket, making it possible to focus on what matters. Invest in storage that makes a difference with a 5-year advanced warranty. So first, let's begin with the box, as receiving it sure feels completely different. It arrives in a flight case, a protective box mainly used for music equipment and large fragile items that requires 2 people to carry because the whole thing weighs close to 50 kilograms. And here's me next to it for scale. Now the good thing is the case is reusable of course, and Phanteks chose this packaging material over traditional cardboard to avoid damage on arrival. Now interestingly, these cases cost up to $500. But with Phanteks' own manufacturing, the price of the flight case has been reduced below $200, so it's not a significant portion of the total price you pay. The way you remove the Elite is to lay the flight case down, using the top foam piece as the base and lift the enclosure via the straps. Highly recommend you do this with 2 people to avoid back injuries, and then straighten the case so you can put away the flight case until further use. Just be mindful of just how large that box is, so ample of storage space is required. Now I want to talk about the price a little bit more because it is so uniquely high. I mean, you could build a full system for that much money, and Phanteks has some strong competition already established, with case labs being more affordable for the high-end water cooling market. Now sure, there are a lot of difficult pieces in here, like the giant tempered glass side panel that swivels to open. That mechanism is not easy to implement, plus it has that ventilation built in for the bottom chamber, and there's a lot of complex machined 4mm aluminum on the exterior, that complements this high-end status of the Elite, including this giant rear side panel that is curved at the bottom, creating this beautiful character for display that is also carpet friendly, as the premium aluminum piece at the bottom spans the entire length of the case, and the tall feet help with airflow intake. And so when you take in the Elite, it's like a long-term commitment, and I love what Phanteks has done to balance functionality with luxury. So if you're used to mid towers like I am, be prepared to be blown away at the size of this super tower. It is incredibly tall, it's thicker than my Evolve ATX, and if I was to substitute to stay it on my side, it looks a little bit out of place and perhaps needs to be placed on a small pedestal instead. For accessories, we have 2 boxes, one inside the bottom chamber and the other inside the flight case itself. Don't forget about that one. It includes 2 SSD caddies, 6 normal drive caddies, the power splitter plate, a 5¼ drive cage with 2 slots and the same color accent at the front as on the case, and it is meant to be installed facing the glass window like so, allowing users to install, touch interfaces or optical drives. Then we have a vertical GPU bracket that's included that we'll cover later, a handy toolboxes here for your screws organization, and an 8-pin CPU extension. Furthermore, we get these extra panels, including an ITX tray, a side radiator bracket, plus a top panel cover if you want to close the top of the case for a more silent system, but be mindful, the color of the panel will match the color of the exterior. The front facade is pretty plain aside from what looks like a 5¼ drive bay, but it's a door with all the I/O behind it, including 4 USB 3.0, HDMI pass-through, a Type-C port, dual audio jacks for dual systems, plus a wheel to control the integrated case lighting that lets you cycle between a bunch of colors, adjust the brightness, select the breathing mode or a rainbow mode. And I've always been a fan of Phanteks' approach to lighting, with soft accent strips running along the side and the top that's beautiful and absolutely stunning to look at. Plus you can add more and route them on the inside, which is one of the easiest RGB lighting solutions you can find on the case. Now about that Type-C connector, the first batch of the Elite will ship with the USB 3.0 19-pin connector, but a new USB 3.1 Gen 2 20-pin connector is coming later that will be a free upgrade for the Elite owners. And since there are two sets of the I/O, the power button at the top has also dual press to start each system individually. So let's get inside and talk about the interior layout and all those cooling options. But first, I love the swivel glass panel that feels secure and strong on those hinges despite being quite heavy. I would definitely recommend you remove it to make the case lighter during installation. Majority of the frame is held in with screws, and aside from the chunky aluminum exterior panels, the main frame is powder-coated steel. The case internals are divided into three main chambers, with the bottom accommodating an extra power supply, plus 6 drive caddies at the front. It is a modular system, but the compromise here is that storage limitation. For example, this space could easily fit more drives, but the Elite is a water cooling monster first before anything else. A dust filter spans the bottom of the case. It is magnetic and easily accessible, plus the bottom fan bracket on this chamber is also removable with support for up to a 480mm radiator. So this chamber is multi-purpose for either water cooling, storage, or an additional power supply, or a combination of all three. As for the main chamber, a lot is happening here. A total of 5 140mm fans are included, 3 at the front and 2 at the rear for exhaust. One of the most interesting design choices for the interior was to include these aluminum covers on the side wall that match the exterior color. And what they hide are all these extra mounting locations for the drive caddies. 5 of them can be installed here, and you can also install SSD caddies instead of the aluminum plate, but they cannot be installed at the same time as those large drive caddies. So this entire wall is used to hide incoming cables to the main interior, which is why it has that side-to-side movement and adjusted with the thumb screws at the back. But I do prefer standard rubber grommets, as there are no particular ways to channel your cables with this open area. There is a bit of a compromise on having this flexible storage / mounting location, but with more difficult cable management. This area can also be swapped for a side radiator bracket that supports a 360mm rad. It's a definitely unique way to experiment with airflow and your water cooling configuration, and you can install long tube reservoirs on the side, and going this route would require the removal of the side plate at the back, so there is actual airflow coming out. It's held in with the one thumb screw and comes with a dust filter. 2 more drive caddies can be installed beneath the motherboard area. This way you're blocking the ITX spot, but they are lifted high enough to fit a set of fans underneath, so if you're using this middle portion for cooling. By default, the chambers are isolated with more aluminum plates that match the exterior color. The front plate can be removed if you're passing a radiator into the bottom compartment, with the rubber grommets available in the somewhat awkward middle position, being too far from all the hardware. The larger plate can also be removed and this space occupied either with a radiator or that second ITX system. The top panel has a dust filter with these gorgeous ventilation openings on each side that are also filtered on both the top and the front panels that are easily removable. And like I mentioned earlier, you can mount a solid panel for that extra silence, but here you have a fully flexible mounting configuration for up to a quad 120mm fans setup or triple 140mm with their respective radiator sizes. And this fan bracket is also removable. It mounts conveniently from the top to make installation easier, and this bracket is pretty much centered, which for a case of this wide and this size should not be a concern. It's just centered for the symmetrical appeal. Removing the front panel, we find another giant area for fans, where if you remove the middle plate, you can fit a 560mm radiator at the front. And the case is wide on purpose to support multiple large radiators inside at the same time. And so here's a blown out view of all the supported radiator locations inside the Elite. So Phanteks is clearly targeting only the high-end users that would take full advantage of all the available space. Taking off the back panel, it is incredibly heavy and large, be careful with it, but with captive thumb screws, so that's a positive. We have a very spacious rear chamber. Here you install your main power supply, which is out of sight and on its side, with many Velcro straps around the main channels for cables. But I'm a little surprised this area was not utilized for more storage capacity. There are only 2 SSD caddies, and clearly the focus has been on water cooling, as 2 pump brackets are included, so you could use soft tubing for routing into the main chamber or relocate the pump brackets, as they do install on any 120mm fan mount. And finally, 2 PWM fan hubs are included with support for 6 fans each, something that will likely come in handy, for all the water cooling stuff. I just wish we had fan cable extensions that were included with the case. And starting with the build, I recommend removing all exterior panels. That makes handling the case easier. It makes the case much lighter so you can move it around a bit more. And it's meant to be standing for assembly thanks to the extended motherboard standoffs that hold the board before the screws are used, which is awesome. And I decided to take the dual system approach without a custom loop, and as you can see, the Elite desperately needs at least a couple of 360mm radiators to fill all that space. And first I want to cover the vertical GPU bracket because it's not exactly what I thought it would be. For one, only the left side of the I/O on a GPU has clearance for your I/O, as the right side is blocked by the mounting screws. You do have that second internal PCI slot on the bracket, but that would move the GPU very close to the motherboard. Second, the bracket occupies 7 PCI slots, blocking any other PCI device on its path. Luckily, my NVMe SSD fit at the very top of the motherboard slot without interfering with the GPU. So while this vertical GPU showcase looks fantastic and has potential, I feel the clearance compromise somehow needs to be reduced. I also installed an ITX system right below. That is an interesting experiment, but cable management is challenging. I was able to route all the cables through the drive cutout, as otherwise there are no clean ways to route the cables off to the side of the motherboard from that bottom chamber where the power supply sits, and I wish more emphasis was put for cable routing from that bottom chamber into this ITX section. For example, if the aluminum middle plates somehow covered the open area, that would be good, or if you're installing fans or radiators in the section for the ITX system, it would hide that bottom chamber. What would really be nice though is to have a power supply shroud, because otherwise it's quite exposed and might detract from using 2 power supplies. So maybe using a power supply splitter that Phanteks also sells for that second system might be an excellent idea. If you are using a second GPU for the ITX side, it looks a little strange having different cards, and also keep in mind the proximity of the bottom GPU to the side panel. That might get choked for air, although in my tests the GPU temperatures were not a concern. Cable management for the main system, however, is a lot more familiar with grommets underneath the board, and that fully open side entrance, it's fine just as long as you clean up that visible exit. Taking a look at the back, don't be alarmed by that huge cable mess. I intentionally used red cables to show the dispersion, but the side panel closed without any force. I feel the drive storage at the front is a little bit too far. Maybe a more compact drive cage would have satisfied my SSD only system, but I am genuinely surprised at the lack of appropriate channels for the cables from here into that main compartment. I'm used to having grommets for my 24-pin and PCIe cables, but here you need to work creatively to solve this cable mess. Also, a few SSD mounts at the back side of this bracket would have been perfect to utilize this area for extra storage, as otherwise these 4 SSDs occupy a much larger than expected area and the bottom chamber at the front. And so the Phanteks Elite is a unique case in many regards. It achieves flexible water cooling options perfectly, but only targeting the higher tier showcase builder, while merging all of Phanteks' excellent ideas on what defines a functional interior with this luxurious status. Having the option for a second system presents interesting opportunities on how and when that system will be utilized. Not forgetting a second set of peripherals is required for the whole thing to be operational. My favorite part of the super tower concept is to maximize the potential, or find the full potential on what's possible inside the Elite. The execution here is almost perfect, with primary emphasis on water cooling, but I would like to see it expanded to cover more storage options with compact SSD cages, perhaps a simpler vertical GPU bracket, and more options to cover up that midsection, plus a power supply shroud for the bottom chamber. But regardless of how many things the Elite does right, the astronomical price point will only be in reach of the lucky few who have that large interior to fill. This is a water cooling luxurious heaven with a very fitting title of the Elite that deserves our damn innovative award. So yes, it's been a very long one, but let us know what you think of this enclosure in its entirety. Let's have a conversation if Phanteks is going crazy to release an $899 case, and how do you think they delivered? I'm Dimitri with Canucks. Apologies for my voice, I'm getting better, promise you, and we'll see you in the next video.